All right, guys, welcome back to the Brutal American Podcast. My name is Tate Taylor. I'm here with Pastor Ethan Sin. As always, we've got a fun one today. This is an episode that we've done before, about a year ago, the first time that we went and did the FTX. So there will be some repeat stuff from that one in this one. And if you haven't listened to that one, you should definitely go listen to that one, because that was the inaugural first time we had ever done this. First time Ethan had put it together and led it. So that one's worth listening to, but I think we'll be able to kind of expound on that a little bit in this episode. Talk about, once again, the principles and the why behind why we're doing something like an FTX, why we're doing these things with the boys in the Titus 2 program here at the church. But also go more in depth, because we did more stuff this year than we did last year. When we took them out this time, it seemed like it got more complex. There was more intensity to it.
Longer. I think overall.
Longer duration.
I think overall it's just better.
Yeah.
And one of the ways, without getting ahead of myself, that I think that is, when we got back last time, we had a whole list, like a Google or an Apple Note of like all these things we want to do different next time. And it was long.
Yeah.
And this time around, it was like, no, that was pretty good. We had like a few little logistical things, but overall, we were pretty happy with it. So It's encouraging that I think we've made improvements on it. We can keep doing that every year.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as like normal housekeeping stuff, this is going to be coming out after the conference. We're recording pre-conference because things are just going to be a little bit nuts here. Going into next week, it's pretty much like we're starting our conference like at the end of this week, essentially, and going to be rolling into that, and it'll be busy, and looking forward to getting to hang out with a bunch of you guys. I've talked to a few of the guys that I know are going to be out here, so excited for that, and hopefully that's a good time and is fruitful. And then after that, we're looking forward to a little bit of time off to kind of not be working on media quite so constantly, maybe be off our phones for a little bit, which will be good. So just trying to front load things and make sure you guys aren't going without content. We're not missing stuff while we're off. So the other thing with this is that this is still fresh on your mind, and we want to kind of strike while the fire's hot and make sure that we're getting everything that we can out of exercises like this. Because our podcast, if you're not listening to some of the other stuff that New Christian Press puts out, ours is a bit different in the sense that it's not necessarily super like politically active. It's not always quite as pastoral. Like there's some aspects of it that definitely do that. And it's not typically as, I think, theoretical. It's a little bit more hands-on, which means that we have to actually go out and do things in order to talk about them. And so hopefully that's helpful to you guys and encourages you to go out and actually get your hands on some real world stuff and start putting some of this stuff into practice. But for us, that means that we actually have to go do these things in order to like talk about them. We can't just like say, well, if we wanted to go take the boys out and like formulate something of like what we might do. Yeah. We actually have to go do the thing.
It is real life. It is stuff that we're doing all the time. And I think we've been super encouraged by guys, like we did the GBRS fitness test episode, and all the guys that like went out and did it and sent their scores in, or stuff like this, or, Titus 2 stuff, or I get emails or calls all the time about the guild and how to do that. And so, I mean, that is one of the founding principles of what we're trying to do is like, here's how we do it here. Go and do it and tell us how it went and tell us what you learned, and you can learn from our mistakes. And it's just encouraging that, not just like theoretically talking about it, but like just that call to action.
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping into the FTX from this year, second ever here in the year 2026. So before we jump into the details of what you guys actually did, I didn't get to make it this year. I had other stuff going on here, so I didn't get to go. But I'm curious, first of all, I'd like to hear you talk about why overall that we're doing something like this. Like, yeah, it's cool to go do cool guy stuff, but what are we actually trying to get out of it? What are we trying to instill in the boys? What are we trying to learn ourselves from doing stuff like this? What is the actual why behind this?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. So stands for field training exercise. I've had a lot of people ask me that, so I'm just going to throw that up front, field training exercise. And it kind of came out of an idea of we need to have a culminating event at the end of the year for our Titus 2 boys. And these are things we've talked about in the past. Some people grow up doing Boy Scouts or trail life or things like that. And, kind of like in that vein or in that direction. But a lot of those organizations we don't have or wouldn't be a part of today. And really want to do things in the way that we think is best and not be beholden to some other organization. So I think that was kind of like the overall genesis of it. Plus different experiences I've had and some of the guys in the church have had with like SEER training and other field training exercises and just things that we have been formative for us over the years and wanting to pass that knowledge on. And I think a lot of it too, you ask like, why do boys need to know this or need to know how to use a compass or a map? And it's like, maybe they don't, but it does present a really nice opportunity to test some of these other soft skills that you can't just do in the classroom. You can't just do on the sports field. Like, so when we think about what are the desired learning objectives that we're trying to accomplish, leadership, teamwork, responsibility, adapting to difficult situations, some manufactured hardship. We talk about that a lot. Building toughness in the boys, having them push their limits. Like there are different ways to do this, but one of the things is, and it happened a couple times this trip, but like boys think they're at their limit and they're not. And so just kind of like exploring those boundaries of what your actual physical and mental limitations are. And then some of the things, how do you do that? Land nav training and small arms training and some of the bushcraft stuff. And we incorporated a lot more communications and tactics this year, problem solving, put a lot more in them in terms of the mission planning, overall stress of having several days strung together of like, sleeping on the ground and being cold and being wet and being tired and being hungry and, working hard and dealing with blisters and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just for what we found is like a good environment to get people out of their comfort zone, to get these young men out of their comfort zone, and give them an experience that if you don't go out and make this happen, unless you join the military or you do, something that not everybody is going to do, you're just going to miss some of these experiences.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely one of those things that the general population as a corporate group, like there's a small percentage of guys who have been through something like this. And it's extremely useful. Like I think you can definitely tell a difference in confidence and bearing and not just like their attitude towards the world and their ability to kind of like stand with their chest out, but also their genuine like ability to just be skilled and know what's going on. Their situational awareness is going to be better. All of those things they're really, really important. I remember when we went out there last year and talking about the land nav stuff and then them looking at maps on the table while we're at the campsite and then looking around at the features around us and trying to figure out where exactly they're at, the points that they need to be aimed at to get to something on the other side of that ridge, that kind of stuff that I think I kind of sort of take for granted. I grew up land surveying in Texas with my dad. My granddad did the same thing, and so did my uncle. And so like that was just like a directional thing, was just normal. I just was used to him constantly asking me like which way's north, and then all right, well, we're standing in this thicket, which way's the truck? We've been out there for an hour and a half and we hadn't seen the truck in that amount of time. And he's like, where are we? And so constantly just being reminded that you need to know what's going on and where you're at and how to get out of the situation that you're currently in. All of those little things that if you grow up in a city or in a suburb and you ride with your mom to soccer practice and then back home and you're kind of just doing whatever, like you don't know where you're at. Well, there are tons of people that have no situational awareness at all.
Even now, like how often do you drive without turning this on and like giving you turn by turn?
Yeah. You got GPS screen showing you exactly where to go all the time.
I remember being a young lieutenant and, you've got these MFDs in the jet and one of them is usually a map. And you have a little airplane on there and like you can just, your airspace boundary and you could just like fly that little airplane back and forth, but like anybody who was any good got to a point where they're actually looking outside and they have the situational awareness, say like, okay, that mountain range, that's pretty close to my boundary there. And that river, that's pretty close to my boundary there. And they're spending their time a lot more outside than inside. Mm-hmm. And same kind of thing. You have to like force yourself to do it because it's too easy just to be like heads down all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that's another application of that principle.
And this is a way that you create like young men who are independent rather than dependent on everything around them to keep them, alive or like headed in the right direction. Not just from like a physical standpoint, but in general, just in life.
Yeah. We've definitely been pushing the physical aspect more this year, having them work out and turn in their workout sheets and doing we have fitness tests coming up for them, I think in July.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another way to and we've done some sports, but this is another way of it's a different kind of physicality
For sure.
Not always, sprinting as fast as you can, but like we manufacture scenarios where you actually have to, and you have to do it with a bunch of gear and different stuff. So I think that's really good. Even just like having 4 days in a row where they're outside, they're purifying their own water, they're having to keep the fire going if they want to be warm. They're just having to think about things and be a little more independent, a little more responsible than probably your average 13 to 17-year-old.
100%. And
then through the scenario based stuff, through the missions and the recon and all the stuff that we kind of make up notionally, you're putting real responsibility on them. And, every time I'm out there, it really like dawns on me. This is actually like a pretty serious thing. Not that anything we're doing is that serious. Like it's not crazy hard or anything, but like we're out in the middle of nowhere. We've got no cell coverage. You could have a real medical event. All these kids have guns, like things can go wrong. And skip into the end, we got dumped on the last morning with snow in the end of May in Utah. And even that, as like the one running this thing with three other of our guys, like I'm like really thinking through what are the implications of if we stay longer. Are we going to get out of here? Are we going to have to spend another night or two here? Yeah. And just dealing with some illness and blisters and, just different stuff like that where there are, it's not nothing. It's not Boy Scouts out in the woods spending the night. What does he say on True Grit? Like, it ain't no coon hunt.
Yeah.
But there are things that do kind of make you realize, no, it is pretty serious, and not to go off half cocked, and making sure that there's the right preparation done. You've got enough help, and you've got enough ways to communicate and comms and GPS and things like that as backup in case things do kind of go south.
Yeah, because you're formulating in a way where you want to be able to control all the variables as much as you possibly can. But if something happens that you weren't expecting, it becomes a much more high stakes situation very quickly. So, I think that's great. I think that level of seriousness is really good for young men, especially for it to be kind of on them to be assets and not simply like recipients of all of the care and aid and attention and all that good stuff. Like none of these kids' parents are there. It's them and a bunch of like some guys from the church who don't care that they're cold, right? Like It's a very different situation than like going camping with your family and then it rains on you or something. Like it's much more high stakes than that.
I'm Ethan.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Defiant Machine Works.
Here at Defiant, we specialize in precision firearm customizations that deliver performance and aesthetic. Hand stippling for superior grip and control in any condition, CNC slide milling and optic cuts, porting to reduce recoil, and flawless Cerakote finishes in any color or pattern you want. The best part? Industry-leading turnaround, your custom build finished in 2 weeks or less. No endless waits, just high-performance firearms that stand out. From Glock to SIG, Smith & Wesson to CZ, we handle it all with over 10 years of collective machining experience. So take your build to the next level, head over to DefiantMachineWorks.com and use code WARCHEST at checkout for 10% off. That's WARCHEST at checkout for 10% off.
That is one thing that huge benefit, huge blessing to have guys like you were there last year. This year we had three of our guys that kind of in our shooting group that went and one had went last year and the other two was their first time. And a lot of it, hunting, fishing, backpacking, like they shooting, they've done a lot of that, but like to put it in a scenario and give them objectives and do the notional stuff like land nav, like a lot of that was relatively new. And so they're kind of also learning on the fly, but they have enough experience in the outdoors where they're like, no, it huge benefit. And to have those guys who are willing to take off 4 days of work, spend their time, spend their gas, come up there, make it a great event. Like it's an enormous blessing for the community.
I think it's so important for us to kind of zone in on that for just a second from a principled standpoint. like if you're in a church and you're trying to build up a local community, we're trying to build up a brotherhood, and then we're also, if you've got that sort of the beginnings of that, or it's sort of that foundation has been laid, and now you're trying to look into the future and go, all right, how do we replicate this? How do we make the generation that's coming up better than us when they get here, more capable? You're going to have to do things that at the time cost you a bunch of time and effort and sleeping on the ground and you being uncomfortable and you like spending your money to go do this thing that you won't see the benefit of potentially ever. But like the hope is that you wouldn't see it for a few years, right?
I see it as two things. One, like, why do we do a lot of these things is like pouring into our community. These are the young men, they're the next generation, and like how we shape them and hone them now will either benefit our community, benefit our church, or harm it, right? So I do see that and that kind of pastoral aspect of it. But then the other thing is like my kids, maybe, your kids are 10 years behind, 6 years behind, whatever it is. And so what we create now and the kind of like institutions and programs and the kind of like culture that we set now, they will benefit from.
What we establish as norms now are going to affect the things that our kids are doing when they get here.
And so if I had a 14-year-old, he'd be out doing that, right? And I will, God willing, one day, and he'll benefit from the work that we're putting in now. So I do think that is maybe the selfish side of it.
Yeah.
But I do, there is a future vision, looking ahead to say like, but how great is it going to be in 10 years?
Yeah. But I think that's important to go like, that's actually a very rightly ordered self-interest, right? Like this is a good thing to get started and get going. So,
it's the same thing with like baseball, basketball, football. The things we do is like our kids don't participate really. They might stand out in the outfield and like have a glove, but like it's not for them.
Yeah.
It's not for them yet, but it will be. Yep. So yeah, I mean, I think that beyond that, the environment is such where mom's not there, dad's not there. You've got 4 guys out here who are like, they know you well enough and you're there for them, but they're also like, no, this is, kind of legit, and like we're going to take it seriously. And so it's just a little bit different kind of environment with the kind of militaristic type training and the way that you speak to each other and the seriousness that, the solemnness that you have when you're like, no, that this is our mission. And like we give them, hey, here's what we're going to go do, and kind of make up stuff. And we're like, we know we're playing make believe, but like, guess what? Everybody is. If the Army was doing something like this, they're playing make believe, right? Like until it's real, that's how they do it. Right. So like, it's we kind of I think with young boys, teenagers, you're like when you were 6 and you're playing Cowboys and Indians, like that was cool. But now you're like, I'm not 6, so this isn't cool. But like if you go and enlist and you go, to the kind of fake wars that we train in and practice, like you're playing pretend. You'll say bang bang, like it's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So like kind of get over yourself.
Yeah. There's definitely an aspect of like dropping the bravado in a situation like this, because you're going to do things that you've never done. You're going to do things that like when you do them for the first time, it's going to be embarrassing because you suck at it. But you're also just going to screw stuff up just by default and then reap the reward of screwing things up. And you're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to get your buddies in trouble. And I think taking it seriously enough where you can, it's a weird dichotomy to like take the thing that you're doing very seriously without taking yourself seriously along the way. And that's definitely something that the young men are learning in a scenario like this.
They're one good example of that. And we did a pretty good job of every time there was like a recon mission, kind of a out and back in the woods with land nav, we would debrief it and do an after action report. And then when we got done, we did the same thing. One of the things I brought up, so I think this was in a mission briefing or debriefing. Joe said, everyone show up with your pad of paper and something to write with. And at least one of them didn't have either one and didn't say anything. And Joe starts the briefing. He's like 2 minutes in. He's like, where's your notepad? Oh, I don't have it, sir. And so Joe kind of smokes him for a while. And then and they get back, and during that time they run to the lake and back, and during that time somebody left on the ground, so he picks it up and puts it in his pocket, and it's like, all right, everyone get your pad and paper, and he obviously knows not everyone's going to have it, and so he smokes them again, and like it just kind of kept going, but eventually it ended, and I brought up, I said, Wyatt, do you remember when I was being pedantic before we left the church, before we got on the road? I said, go in my classroom, sit on the floor. I'm gonna do this briefing. And Wyatt grabs a chair and puts it in the middle of the floor. And everyone else is sitting on the floor, and Wyatt's sitting on a chair. I'm like, look, this is gonna sound really pedantic, but here's the lesson I want you to learn right now at 1G and 0 knots is that when I say to do something, do it exactly the way I say it. And if you want to make a wise appeal, make a wise appeal, but like, don't think you know better. If you learn that right now, this weekend is going to go so much better for you. Mm-hmm. And, and then I brought that back up. I said, remember when I was being pedantic and I said that? Wasn't that true? If you would have just followed the instructions or made a wise appeal or said, I don't have it, I lost it or whatever, like, wouldn't that have gone better for you? And they're all like, yeah, but you had to learn it the hard way.
Right. This is the difference between like the theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge. And young men are absolutely in need. Like they cannot understand things unless it's like beat into them, basically. That's why the Proverbs read the way they do, where Solomon just repeats himself over and over and over again because he's writing to his sons and he knows how they are. Like this is just the frame of young men. It's just how it works.
So yeah, I mean that's what we went out there to do. So I don't know if you want to shift into
sure.
Now that we've kind of talked about the philosophy and why, maybe into what we plan to do, what we actually did, and then go through like what went well, what didn't, what are the lessons learned, what do we do different next time? Yeah,
absolutely. I think the sooner we can get into stuff like that. I know when I've communicated with you guys that are listeners of the show, you send us messages or we get to meet you in person. The stuff that we typically get is like, okay, you said that you guys did this FTX thing. What is that? What did you actually do? How did you plan it? Where did you go? How far away is this from where you guys live? Like all of the logistical side of it and like the actual planning and execution, I think is something you guys are interested in. So I think the more of our time that we can spend on that, the better.
Yeah. So broad overview, we were out there for 4 days, 3 nights. We met up at the church at noon, told them to have eaten lunch, all their stuff. I'd given them a list of like, this is your min equipment list months in advance. They'd made dozens of trips to Smith & Edwards, which is like our Army Navy surplus kind of store. And, Mom, I need a Leatherman. Mom, I need a boonie hat. Mom, I need some new socks. Like, and it went so much better this year. So preparation, we did some training and some education, some classroom stuff that I can talk about. But in preparation, we did one pack breakdown where I had their list of their min equipment list. And I made them all take it all out and show me your socks and show me your compass and show me your, pencil and your Rate in the Rain notebook or, whatever. This year, it went tremendously better than it did last year.
Last year was an absolute nightmare. The first
absolute nightmare. That's not what that's not the word I was thinking, but yeah, that's true.
I was trying to get out in front of
it. This year, we had 11 boys. There was only one thing on the entire list for that one boy was missing, and everybody else had everything. So lessons being learned and maturity happening and all that. So we did that in preparation. On the day that we left, they did the same thing. If a couple of them missed it, so they kind of did their pack breakdown. Then everybody had all their stuff. We loaded up. We had three guys meet up here and one guy meet us up there. But basically, we drove 3 hours into Wyoming and then back into Utah, into the high Uintas, north slope kind of area, McKinnon, and it's where we went last year. Essentially, we were about 8 miles east of the camp from last year. Similar area where we go elk hunting. And then from there, dropped them off about 3 miles from what we called the FOB, where there was like their home base that they operate out of, and then made them hike in with everything that they brought. So about 3 mile walk in, road march. They, issued their rifles, issued their radios, and Joe led them in for about a 3 mile, relatively flat, ease into it, kind of ruck, and then get in, set up their camp, and go through all that kind of stuff. And then that night, they're pulling fire watch, 2 hour shifts in the little entry control point or foxhole that they made. So they're staying up all night in shifts, and then we get them up the next morning, mission planning, do a recon mission out and back, land nav, all that, get back, debrief it. That afternoon, we split the teams up. We had kind of two different groups. So we had, I was there. We had two other guys who were kind of the Alpha team, Bravo team leaders. And then we had five in one group and 6 in the other. One of them ended up being sick the entire time. Probably shouldn't have gone at all. So he didn't get to really participate. So it ended up being about 5 and 5. And then another guy who was more on the Op 4 side with me and playing some of those assets. So that afternoon, we did small arms training with one group. The other team built a sand table for mission briefing. And then that evening, it was, more of some academics, tactics kind of courses where they're moving around. Joe's having them do some battle drills. And then that evening, I think we gave them an hour to fish before bedtime, and they're, asleep by 9:30.
Yeah.
And then the next day was pretty much the same thing. Swapped the teams. We took the other team to small arms training. And then Saturday, we got them up early, put the team together, went out, did a recon mission, have them do some airstrikes and call for fire, and then assault through, and then basically ambushed them. They had some medevac stuff to deal with, and then we ended there, and then headed home. So we ended up going home a little bit early, but that was kind of the overall broad strokes of what we were doing.
So just for the people who are civilians like me and don't have any idea what Op 4 is, like what is what is the FOB, what is the Op 4, like what are these different pieces that are being played?
The idea, so we went up to a place near Sheep Creek Lake or Sheep Creek Reservoir, and so we had set up the forward operating base, the FOB there, and that was where my tent was. All of their shelters were made, all the vehicles, and so
they're all sleeping in like basically ranger tents under ponchos.
Yeah, they made little diamonds out of ponchos and had sleeping bags and pads to put down, and some did better than others, making like a couple inches of bedding underneath that. Ari had like a real nice like
that makes sense,
and most of them were just like, no, I'll sleep on the rocks. And so that they were all set up there, and then each day they would go out to an objective that we told them to recon and then come back. So that was kind of what that was for. But yeah, all the time they're not, doing something. They were there and overall it was super busy. Like I planned this stuff and I try to iron it out to like within an hour or two of kind of how long I think it's going to take. And like we were up at between 3 and 5 every morning and going all day till it got dark, and it got dark at 9, 10 every night, and it was like long days, short years, long drives, short putts.
If you haven't listened to the album yet, you can go cry with the rest of us.
Super, one thing after the other. So it wasn't a lot of downtime. I think one evening it was like 8:30. I said, you guys can go fish or you can hang out by the fire or go to bed. And they pretty much just all went to bed.
You're exhausted. When did it start snowing? Because I know that you sent us a picture basically on your way back, and just to our little group text. And there's a bunch of boys in ponchos, and it is just dumping snow. And you said, yeah, we got sunburnt yesterday, and we got snowed on today.
Yeah, it was wild. So the weather was beautiful. It was like 60s, 65 during the day, 30s. Each night got warmer. So it was like maybe low 30s, mid 30s. I think the last night was in the 40s because I was coming out of my sleeping bag. And then, do you want me to tell the last part first?
Yeah.
And then we can go.
Yeah.
So the last day, they've all done some land nav at this point. They've done some team tactics. They've done some battle drills. They've kind of all the little pieces and parts of it.
You've worked on all the different stuff that you're going to try to now go execute as a whole.
So the night before, they had made the sand table. So basically, we have all these maps printed out with the MGRS. So, instead of latitude, longitude, it's just military grid reference system. And it's just an easy way. One of your squares is like basically it's a kilometer. And I mean, we've done this before, and it makes a lot of sense. So
yeah,
they built their map on the ground, and it was probably 12 by 12 or something. It was big, maybe not quite that big, but they had these grid squares made out of 550 cord, and they had, here's our lake, and here's the roads, and that's a stick. And, they just built out the map there, and they knew what grid, that's 92, 93, 94. And so Joe briefed the last mission from that sand table that they made. It's pretty cool. They all like that a lot. So we briefed them. They did the mission planning the night before. And basically they had to be in the woods by 3:15. That was their
AM on Saturday.
AM. And so they get, and the intent with that was to do some night land navigation. It's obviously a little bit harder than during the day. So we sent Joe and Jason out with the two teams. They all went together. So not a huge hike to where they were getting, because part of the objective was get there and like just sit in the dark, in the cold, and just watch this field that nothing's in, but like we're telling you there's stuff there. And it was just like, do that. So they're there. Me and Clint are the op fours. So we're the bad guys. We played a lot of different roles. We played bad guys. We played like friendly air assets. We played friendly Kazovac. We played artillery, like all kinds of stuff, just to make it a little bit more interesting. This year we did try to have a little bit more structure to the notional, battle that's going on. So one of the things I did was these different objectives were like, go recon that bridge, go recon that reservoir, go recon that field. I printed out imagery and I put down here's a Russian, BTR, and here's a Hind, and here's some artillery, and here's some infantry. And like when they would get there and they'd be looking at the objective, their team leader, Jason or Joe, would give them the paper and say, here's what you see. So they're making their salute reports. They're calling back, here's what we saw. And they can actually look at the paper and say, all right, I've got 2 BTRs and I've got 2 platoons of infantry, and it looks like they've got a ZSU 23 and, whatever. So it was funny to see one of the kids is a lieutenant colonel's son, and he knew all the Russian stuff. Like he was calling it by the right name. But most of them were like, yeah, that looks like a tank.
I mean, that's what I would be doing.
So they would call that stuff in. So basically they're there on the objective. And I think Joe had them call in, there was some kind of anti-aircraft out there. And so they were supposed to call in a HIMARS strike, like a artillery strike on the anti-aircraft, and then bring in the A-10s, and the A-10s were doing some close air support for them. And then once, everything was destroyed, they were supposed to basically do one of their battle drills and flank through and, assault the notional friendlies that were, or personnel that were still there.
Gotcha. Jason, we talked to Jason Monday night, and he said he was cracking up at how detailed their reports were of stuff. He was like, dude, they're like counting how many guys were in each vehicle. And like, they got way more into it than he was expecting them to.
Yeah, it was good. They did really well. And so it's like 5 a.m. The sun's coming up. Clint and I are out there in the side by sides, and we're shooting off M80s to be the, mortars going off, or we're shooting off smoke grenades to like simulate they destroyed something. And you've got firecrackers and what do you Roman candles, and just different stuff like that. So we do that and we leave, and then basically they're supposed to go back. And on their way back, we were the good guys or whatever, and now we're the bad guys, and we ambush them. Joe gets shot, Jason gets killed, and so basically they're left without any leadership and nobody like guiding them and telling them, here's what you ought to do next. And so kind of giving them that, it's obviously all notional, but we're trying to stress them, trying to make them make decisions, seeing who's going to step up. They've got their leadership kind of hierarchy ladder, and we know if Jason dies, he's, who's next. And so their objective at that point, unbriefed, was Kazovac the casualties that you have and get everybody home safe. And so we ambushed them, shooting, M80s and firecrackers and stuff to like simulate that. And then we left and we let them call in the Kazovac and then basically ended the exercise at that point. But at 5, it started raining, and then it started sleeting, and then it started snowing. And between 5 and 8 a.m., we were all packed up and we were heading back to the church because we're planning on being there longer, but we had like 4 inches of snow at that point. And we were like kind of struggling on these dirt, muddy roads now. Yeah. And I'm glad we left when we did, because it would have been rough pulling some of those trailers out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was good. I mean, I tell people that if I could have drawn up exactly the weather I wanted, that's exactly what I would have asked for. It was hot. It was beautiful. It was like great. Evenings weren't bad. And then the last day they had to endure the suck for a little bit, and then we got in the cars and went home. And so if it would have been longer than that, it would have been miserable.
Yeah. if that had happened on the first night y'all were there, the first morning when y'all woke
man.
up, that would have been a
rough.
very different exercise. So
You would have just seen these just mounds of snow that the kids were sleeping in. Like it would have been terrible. But those were considerations. Were like, man, I don't know. We can't get the forecast here. What if it rains tonight? And just trying to deal with some of that stuff.
Yep. Really cool. I think that is a good overview of kind of the different stuff. I guess if someone is wanting to try to do something like this, do you think that a guy that's just a regular dude, like I don't have military experience, I don't have a bunch of this kind of schooling or education or anything. I know that you guys lean pretty heavily on Joe. You've done some stuff like this. Like what would you say are some good resources to kind of learn some of this stuff yourself so that you can start to pass it on?
Yeah. So I think this year we had the boys read the Army Ranger handbook.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great resource. There's plenty of stuff in there that you're not going to do, and you can kind of skip around to what you need. There's a lot of those kind of resources out there, like the field manuals and the different, doctrine kind of stuff that is actually pretty good and pretty helpful. Like we did a long range shooting the other day, and I was looking at the Army sniper field manual, whatever it was. And some of that stuff is actually pretty good. You kind of got to skip through it because there's a lot of stuff you don't need, but I think that exists. There's a lot of PowerPoints that are out there that you can download from the Marine Corps, and some of that stuff is pretty helpful. But I think your point is valid that like, how are you going to teach somebody else how to do this stuff if you don't know how to do it yourself?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the intent of bringing out some of the other guys that weren't there last year. Was I knew their basic foundation. I knew that they could figure it out, but they, before this weekend had probably never taken a compass and a map out in the field. So it was kind of like to expand that body of knowledge as well. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, if I was going to do this for the first time, I would figure out what are those learning objectives I want to accomplish? What do I actually need to master or at least be proficient at before I try to teach a 14-year-old how to do it?
Yeah.
And go do a dad's, FTX for a night or two where you like actually are like, do I know this well enough to teach it to somebody else?
Right. Because like we were talking about earlier, like it doesn't take much for this to turn into a pretty high stakes situation. You don't want to be out there and then be in over your head as the guy leading it. And so you want to go in and make sure that you're as prepared as you could possibly be. I know that also everywhere that I've lived, as far as I can think off the top of my head, there's been at least one guy that I've been acquaintances with or friends with, close to, who has experience doing stuff like this. Like military service is a pretty common thing. Like I know for a fact that if I just wanted to go do something like this, like Joe would love to take me out and like teach me how to do all of this. Like it's actually not that difficult to find people who have these skill sets. But one of the things that I think men tend to do is like, there's a little too much personal pride involved. You don't want to be the guy that doesn't know what's going on. And so you're not good at asking the right questions, which is like, hey, I'm good at these basic skill sets. Like maybe I'm in shape. Maybe I don't have any problem sleeping on the ground for a few nights, but like I've never used a map and a compass and operated this way out in the mountains or out in the woods. Do you think that you could come out and show me how to do this? Like, I don't know, what if our GPS system stops working for whatever reason and I need to be able to navigate without it?
Or you're hunting and your batteries die.
Right.
Or like there are plenty of scenarios where you're like, no, that actually would be a useful skill to know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many, I would assume that there's a pretty large group of guys who are going out in the mountains and hunting every fall that are not taking physical maps with them.
Yeah, probably
Right.
not. Yeah.
And
That's the other thing. There is a U.S. topographical website where I print it. So one of our dudes works for the Army, and he got us a bunch of like nice maps, laminated, printed, gave us a bunch of expired MREs, from the Guard. And but I got online and printed them on our bulletin paper, the 11.5 by or the 11 by 17s, and you can just get the one you want, make sure you have the right grid reference system, and print them out, and it's really easy to do. And so, yeah, to that point is like, there's no reason to be somewhere and not have a physical map in a Ziploc bag or something.
Yeah. I think that's like as simple as it is. Like stuff like that is actually really important. You want to be the guy that has a pocket knife. You want to be a guy that knows where you're at and has a map and knows how to get out of there. Like those are good things to know. Those are just things men should be aware of and paying attention to. So that's really good.
Yeah. Beyond that, we definitely did a lot of like, we had to tell them like, look, we have this scenario going on, and unless we tell you otherwise, we're like in scenario. We're in the camp. We have the ECP, and you guys are going to be the, keeping watch out and stuff like that. Walk through some of the like, look, we're doing this notionally. If we had 50% security all the time, half of you wouldn't be able to go do the, make fires or water or eat or what, and so we're kind of being notional about some of it. And then sometimes we'd stop and, okay, we're going to go make a shooting range and do some arms training. We'd kind of like break the scenario and come back to it. So they kind of understood that, but things that were really good. We always have them make a fire the first night, and they're allowed to bring their magnesium rod or their flint and their steel, and that's it. And I don't know how it didn't take as long. First guy was probably done in under 5 minutes.
Which is way faster than last year.
Way faster than last year. 10 of the 11 made fires the first night. The last one had a little bit of help. And then the next night he did in like 2 minutes.
Nice.
The one that spent probably 90 minutes the first night.
That is the thing with stuff like this is like, it's just a brand new skill set, and it kind of takes some muscle memory. And sometimes you need to sleep on something before you figure it out.
Yep.
This is one of those weird, like, I don't remember where I picked this up, but I think it was something about like physical training and specifically motor skills for kids. And it's way more intense when you're a toddler, but it still applies to high school boys or even grown men. There is something to like repeating a skill set over and over and over again, and then sleeping and then trying it again the next day. And I think this can be an encouragement for people that are trying to learn new stuff, is that sometimes it just takes some like sleeping on it and repetitive, reps to get it done, because what's actually happening is your brain is running the scenario over and over and over and over and over again while you sleep, which is a pretty crazy thing to think about. But it's almost like a simulation where your mind, when it's learning a new skill, you go to sleep and your mind will automatically run that scenario over and over again before you do it again.
Your mind is just like playing that chip that you chunked over and over and over. And that's why you wake up feeling like, oh man, I could hit that shot now.
Yeah. All night, your brain is going, just don't hit the slice, don't hit the slice, don't hit the slice, don't hit the, and then you get on the range and you hit the slice again. But it's true. Like that happens all the time. Like someone will try something. The first time they try it, they give it 2 hours of effort and they're terrible at it. And then the next day they do it like it's no big deal.
Yeah. No. So we're right by the lake, or within a couple hundred yards of the lake. And so I didn't bring water this time for them. I just brought empty jerry cans and made them fill up their water and use the purifying tablets and the iodine. And that's what they drank all week, and nobody got sick. So they must have done all right with that. But that was a little bit different, harder than just I'm bringing tap water for you to drink. That was probably their biggest lesson learned, was water. I was constantly, every time I saw them, I'm like, is your water topped off? Have you purified it? Have you been drinking water? And usually the answer was no. And I had to like kind of make them do it. But just where are they carrying water? How much water do they have on their person? Some of them showed up with like one canteen.
Yeah.
And like that was their plan, was to carry one canteen. And like some of these hikes they're doing is like 5-6 miles round trip. And it's like, man, you should have drinking 3 times that much water in that amount of time, as warm as it was, as fast as you're moving and stuff. And so I think that was the thing of like just figuring and everyone's a little bit different on what they like. And if you have your ruck on and can you put canteens on, or do you need a Camelback or whatever? But like, I think all of them could have used probably at least one more quart of water on their person.
Yeah.
But that was cool that they did that and did that well. We had them build that, fill sandbags again and make a entry control point or a foxhole. And so that's where they pulled their night security from. Just kind of a fun task where we kind of do a competition, and how many sandbags does this team fill and how many does that team fill? And we did that last year. what else? We each one of these missions, we put a little bit more emphasis on the mission planning instead of just like giving them the mission. We put more on them. So in their training and in their preparation for this, we went through things like the 5-paragraph op order and how to do like a warno and things like that. So they did some of the mission planning, like the route planning last year on the map, but this year they were more like in the scenario, you're going to go recon this bridge. This is what intel says is going to be there. And them thinking through, okay, how close can I get to get a good view into that bridge? And then they would do a couple iterations of that. And we say, no, you can't just walk through the middle of the meadow. Like you actually have to go around that. Or do you see that? Do you see those like lines really close together right there? Like that's a cliff. You can't go, you can't go that way.
Pay attention to those topographic maps.
So we did a couple of iterations of that, but really let them do the heavy lifting on the mission planning and the briefing. And so that was kind of cool. And I think they enjoyed that. The execution was pretty good, like better and worse at actually land nav. You saw individuals like really focus on the compass and then other ones that never pulled out the compass and they're just trying to like terrain associate and dead record, like everything, and varying results with that. So I think people learned a lot about themselves and pace counts and trusting the instruments when they their mind is trying to tell them like, no, I shouldn't trust this. Like, no, you should actually trust your compass. And then when they got on the objective, we spent a lot more time having, notional assets and scenario, because in my mind, if you're going to hike 3 miles or whatever, and then just look at something and then hike back, it would be more interesting if there was a reason why we did that.
Right.
And again, it's all notional, but there would be something like, okay, there's a BTR on the bridge. Ground commander's intent is that you call hog 1 on this frequency and strike that BTR. And so we had done some 9-line training, some cast brief training, some artillery and casevac stuff. I don't expect them to know how to do it, but they were at least familiar enough with the elements of what's in a 9-line that they know they need to know the elevation. They need to be able to do a target talk on. They need to be able to give target grids to the pilot and say, confirm that that's the target that they're dropping on and stuff. And so we did some of that and had some pyro and explosions and smoke. And so that I think made it more interesting for them. The one other thing we did different, this was the second day. Each time we sent them to different objectives, and then the next day we just swapped them. Mm-hmm. And we actually swapped team leaders as well, so they could kind of learn from Jason and Joe differently. The second day, Joe went to the same objective, had a different team with him, and they were like a click and a half away from where the other team was. And they had a good spot and they could see it really well, but they were far. And so I had Clint up as a notional sniper, and he was going to start, drop M80s and shooting at him. But they couldn't even see him because he was on the other side of the hill. And so I said, all right, they're spooling up a QRF to come find you guys. You better get out of there. So we did some basically evasion training for them where me and Clint jumped in side by sides and we're trying to hunt them down. And we're stuck mostly on the roads, but we like know generally where they are, but it's thick enough. I mean, that area is thick enough in there. So we find them at one point and shot some Roman candles at them, and then they disappeared. We never saw them again, but that was something different we did this year. That was, they enjoyed that.
That's really cool. I remember sort of trying to formulate games like this when I was a kid and we would do airsoft wars or whatever. Like, my cousin had a birthday party at my grandparents' place, and they got a bunch of property, and, we're just out there camping in the woods. Like, we're in sight of the house. It's like a quarter mile away. It's up on the hill, but we're down there in the bottom in the woods camping and staying overnight, cooking our own food and like swimming in the pond or whatever. And then the next morning we wake up and it's like, all right, here are the teams split up, and like, we're just going to start killing each other with airsoft guns. But you're like, you get caught where you only got one buddy with you and they got 8 guys in a side by side, and they're just wearing you out and you're trying to get away from them. And yeah, that's awesome though, to have that happen in an even more like wilderness setting where you're like, you're really out there. Yeah. You're really in the mountains trying to get away. And the people who are hunting you are also like grown men who like know what they're doing. That's cool.
Yeah. We were like turning the engine off so that they couldn't hear us, and we're like listening. And using the thermal to try to find them and stuff.
That's awesome.
But that was a good time. Beyond that, food, MREs, I brought enough for them to have 3 MREs a day, which would have been like 6,000 or 7,000 calories, which
should be enough.
They didn't. Turns out they didn't eat nearly that much. Came home with a lot of extra food, but it'll keep for next year. They were kind of sleep deprived. We planned for 8 hours every night, but they had they each had a 2-hour shift. So, they probably got 6. So a little bit of sleep deprivation. We had planned on PT every morning, but in reality, we always planned that, or we have the last 2 years, and everyone's so actually beat that we're like, we don't need to, we can knock that off, or they're going to do something stupid to earn it later. So we can just skip that. Debriefing each mission, I think, was really helpful in trying to learn lessons and making sure the first time we debriefed the teams individually and they didn't communicate with each other. So then, the other team would make the same mistake the next day on the same mission. And so we started debriefing them all together. But that was another kind of lesson learned or improve was talk to your buddies, figure out what their debrief was and tell them what yours was and learn their lessons. So
yeah, y'all are on the same team. Figure this out. Make sure everybody gets better.
The shelters are better this year. Even the last night, the wind started whipping, and so we had everybody kind of shift it so that the low end was pointing into the wind. And all right, what happens if it starts cutting loose? And having to think through some of that stuff. So they did pretty good with that. We did that night land nav mission. We intended on doing. I intended on doing a short one the night before, the 2 nights before, but we just too much going on. So they just did it for real the day of. Beyond that, I think I don't know if I said it this time, all the kids and the airsoft thing is what made me think of it. I think that's another great way to do it. They don't have to be real guns. You could have accomplished what you wanted with airsoft. There is a little bit of less of a severity or seriousness, solemnness when it comes to airsoft guns because you shoot them at each other.
Yeah.
But we had the boys this year, they brought their own rifles or their dad's rifles. They're aircraft loaded. So there's, on safe, nothing in the chamber, treating them like they're, loaded and ready to go. And we had, almost no issues. They treat them very seriously and they're not flagging each other and they're taking it very seriously. So I think there is another, does it really matter? No, but it does add another element of realness to it to no, this is a real gun and I can do 1, 2, 3 things and kill somebody. So,
yeah.
So that was good. Beyond that, every team kind of had their hierarchy and chain of command and put different people in those roles to kind of let them do the mission planning, make decisions when they're out in the woods doing the land nav, try to have different people move through those roles. Everybody had a role on the team and we had them write their kind of job description for what's the radio guy do and what's the navigation guy do and what's the medical guy do, and had, med kits that they were carrying around. Till Martin ripped the zipper off of one of them. So they had to, this fanny pack, they had to put into a ruck and carry the ruck around. But they did well with all those things and putting that's the only kind of downside is you have a team of 5 or 6 boys. It's probably only 1 or 2 of them that's really doing the land nav and using the compass, and
the other ones are just kind of along for the ride.
So, if it was longer, you did more shorter recons or out and backs, then it might be better training for everybody. But, it's kind of one of those limitations.
Yeah.
Got to fish a little bit.
Anybody catch anything?
Jason caught a trout. One of the boys cooked it over the fire. I told him you can bring peanut oil, you can bring spices, you can bring batter, you can bring, a frying pan. You don't have to carry it, or you can just leave it in the truck. And they're like, no, we'll just use the salt and pepper from the MREs. All right, boys. Yeah. And then we in training, some of these classes leading up to it, we did some radio training and comms etiquette, and they all learned the phonetic alphabet and how to talk on the radio. And they were basically talking on the radio the whole time until the last day where it was just me and Joe kind of pretending and they're listening to it. So that was pretty good. But, even stuff like they call in, hey, we want this BTR destroyed. And I'm like, I don't know where you guys are. You got to give me a grid. You know, you got to tell me where you're at. But there were limitations. We were using like the Baofeng radios that we use for the church and almost everything that we do, but line of sight limitations, frequency limitations, where there are real life limitations on if you have this handheld radio and you can't talk to the guy on the other side of that mountain. And we had times where both teams could talk to the fob, but you couldn't talk. They couldn't talk to each other. And so just, I think for us, even if we weren't doing this, getting out and using the equipment that we have and trying in these different situations, seeing how it holds up, is really helpful too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Anything else we need to cover?
No, I mean, I think that's most of it.
Anything that you want to change up or do differently next year or try to improve on in some way?
I really like the way we did it this year. You could talk me into doing like a morning out and back and an evening out and back and making it a little bit shorter. Mm-hmm. I try to pick objectives that like a bridge that's like kind of like a tactical thing that you can see and it's very obvious. We had a reservoir we went to or like a meadow, but like something where like you could imagine, you know, and we were on the bridge, right? At one point, Devin's sick. And so he's with me the whole time playing op for us. So I've got him in a ghillie suit and he's using his signal mirror to like be a sniper, you know, with the scope. And I'm talking on the radio. I'm like trying to do all these things. I'm like, all right, Devin, I'm going to need an M80 and then a smoke grenade. And he's like, Roger, like, and he pops them off. I'm like, no, not yet. and then we have a car drive by right over the smoke. I'm like,
that are not with y'all.
No, just other people, other campers up there. And they're like, kick it out of the way. I'm like, all right, we're good. And then I'm like, all right, give me a string of black cats. And as soon as he lights a fuse and throws it, a cyclist runs right over top of like on this bridge. I'm like, man, we are good. Like
we're going to get arrested.
we were driving back and we stopped for gas in like the first civilization we hit. And the boys want to get out and all buy white monsters. And I'm like, you guys, I think we might all get arrested if you guys walk into this. Like they're all camoed up and painted up and chest rigs and like they're, you know, like, no, you can't go in there.
People are going to have a bunch of questions about what in the world's going on.
So yeah, I mean, overall super happy. You know, you can make little tweaks like that. But overall, I think the time was right. I think we accomplished what we set out to accomplish. Even, you know, we're out there, we're pushing kids, pushing their limits. Like I don't know if people listen to this and think like, we did what with a 13-year-old, or they're like, no, that sounds about right. Like, I don't know how people hear this kind of thing and think like you smoked them for forgetting their notepad or like, you know, I don't know. But the two things. One would be there were two kids that at one point throughout the week they said, Mr. Sen, I don't want to go on this next thing. My feet hurt or I'm sick or whatever. And I'm like, been watching them and evaluating. I'm like, no, that's normal. Your feet are going to hurt. Your back's going to hurt. Like you need to push through this. We're on the downhill. We have the short out and back tomorrow and like, it'll be done. And you're going to, if you quit now, you're going to wish you wouldn't have. So they're kind of asking, can I quit? And I'm like, no, you can't quit. And he came up later and was like, thank you. That was the right call. You know, he did it. He went out. What are you going to do? Like not go? I mean, I don't know, but he did it and he thanked me later. He said, no, thanks for pushing me. And now I think that right there is like why you do it is like you have these kids think they're at their limit. You tell them and you encourage them and you tell them, no, you've got more in the tank and you can do this. And you're going to be really, you know, proud of yourself if you don't do, and if you're going to, you know, be really disappointed if you don't, and be able to like let them test it out and be like, nope, you're right. I actually am tougher than I think I am. It
is such a weird thing to have young men. I mean, I remember going through this where it was almost like a question. I was doing this to my parents, but like, is it okay if I just suck? Like, is it okay if I'm just kind of like not a winner? Like, what if I don't try that hard though? Like, what if I just decide to sit this out? Like, what if I don't want to do this anymore? And they're like, no, that's not okay. Actually, like you're not allowed to do that. And it sounds weird, but it's almost like a test to see if the person that you're asking that question to actually believes in you. And that underline, even if a kid can't put that into words, what he's trying to figure out is if he has someone who's leading him who has more confidence in him than he has in himself. And he's actually looking for, even if he doesn't want to admit it, no, you're not allowed to quit answer, because then it takes it out of his hands.
Yep.
At that point, it's not me that is, I can't quit. There's no choice.
Right.
I just have to do what I have to do. And it actually is easier to just go and do and execute the thing before you if there is no other option.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, what you're teaching that boy is how to do that and have that conversation with himself.
Yeah, 100%.
When he gets older.
And the thing is like, it's not like these kids were hurt, right? It's not like they were injured. It's like they
got blisters or
exactly. And so like you have to know them well enough, but you can even tell in the way that they ask the question, they come up kind of sheepishly.
They already know
like,
the answer.
They already know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Right. Which obviously if they were actually hurt or injured, I wouldn't make them do it.
Right.
Like,
yeah. We're not making kids with broken legs go on hikes or anything.
Yeah. But I think that in and of itself is like a really good reason to do that. And you can learn something about yourself. Another really good experience where one of the boys kind of has an opportunity to go live somewhere else or stay here. And basically he said, he came up to me after church on Sunday and said, because of something Joe said at one of the briefings about why he's still here. And I don't know how this came up. I think it was Joe's like explanation for why he just smoked him for like 30 minutes. But it was like, why am I still here is because there are men in this church who will hold me accountable. And I know that and I trust them. And something that was kind of off the cuff, and Joe didn't know this was going on or anything, but basically that was the thing that said, nope, this is a good place and I'm going to stay here. And that was the thing that helped him make that decision. So stuff like that's kind of, you can't plan for it, but
No.
It's just huge W for those guys. And
Yeah.
you really like to see it.
Yeah. It is one of those things that, like, camaraderie and shared difficulty and shared mission, those things contribute to your sense of well-being and your sense of purpose, to be doing what you're doing with the people you're doing it with, and to have the vision set before you that you do and not feel like it's all futile.
Right.
And that goes a long ways. And so I think these exercises, not just for the boys, but like obviously for the men as well, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, almost all of them, if they saw me on Sunday, came up, shook my hand, and they'll say hi if they like normally, but there was something special with like, I did that. Like they didn't say those words, but it was something like, is that all you got?
I didn't die.
Yeah.
So
I'm still here. I didn't skip church after that, after that experience.
Right.
So the other thing I think I already told you was I always come back and I'm like, I can't wait to have the conversations with the moms after the kids go home and say, Mr. Sen did what? And then they're, 10% truth of the story. And then I have to go tell mom, like, no, actually, here's what happened. And no, that's not exactly how it went. And I kind of dread that. But at the same time, I had this epiphany that's like, you know what? There's a reason why mom's not out there. There's a reason why some of the dads aren't out there. And if that doesn't happen and there isn't a little bit of a question of like, let me get this straight. Like, but can you explain this? A little bit of that, like encroaching on the mom's sensibility of what's appropriate for her 13-year-old or 15-year-old
or safe or yeah.
So I think it's actually a feature, not a bug. It's not, I still don't love it, but I still think it's like, maybe a test of like, was it successful?
Yeah. Yeah. Did we push them as hard as we needed to get the desired effect? And if this is just the nature of people, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, but my mom has said for years that the most difficult part of raising a boy as a mother for her was letting my dad and my grandfathers, my uncles, all the men in my life, but specifically my father, like letting him and not constantly fighting him on turning me into a man. And what that means is like making me do stuff that's super uncomfortable and that I don't want to do. And that oftentimes like my dad doesn't even really want to make me do, but he just knows that it needs to be done. I need to be able to handle those things. And it's better to do it when the people who are forcing the change actually love you and care about you and desire a good outcome, rather than letting the world do that to you remorselessly later on. And it is a painful process. So like, I know that there are still some women, there's not a ton, but there are still some mothers and stuff that listen to the show and are thinking about that with their boys. And your boy is going to need to be put through things that would make you uncomfortable to even hear about secondhand. Like it would be the kind of thing that if you were there, you would have a very hard time keeping your mouth shut and not interrupting and going, wait. Like, are you sure this is safe? Are you sure he's allowed to do that? Can we make it a little safer? Those things are absolutely necessary in order for your boys to turn into men. And even if it's just dads taking their sons out and doing stuff, like there do need to be times where you like look at your boys after something and go, hey, we're going to wait a while before we tell mom about that one. Okay. Yeah. Like, let me tell her that story. Don't tell her that. Like, let's hold off on that one. I'll tell her later at some other, later time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think beyond that, I have a couple things. So this was from the after action report that the boys kind of put together.
This is their feedback. So they had some sustains and some improves. They liked the battle drills. So like doing the battle drill 1 alpha and they did like react to contacts and some of these battle drills. They like that. They want more land nav. They like the land nav. They really like doing the 9 lines and the notional assets and playing. And people that are really good at this will do different voices, So like when you're a FAC A, like guys will get on the radio and they'll be like, their drone pilot will be like kind of a fag and and then there, one's like a cowboy and somebody will do like Christopher Walken and like, just people get into it. My voices all sound just like this. I can't imagine you doing impersonations over the radio.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dan said he does voices for like
reading his kids'
like
stories
Narnia and stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try it. It's not going to happen. But they, and even stuff like, I think you could ask the question like, what's the point of one of these boys learning how to call in a 9 line? Probably not. But you think about what it is the communication, like the being able to talk on the radio and communicate with somebody else about what you're seeing, what you need, and where the good guys are and where the bad guys are.
Just developing effective communication.
It's communication, situational awareness, problem solving, all that kind of stuff. And like
under stress.
And it's cool. Is it applicable directly to what most people are going to ever do? No. But there is like even our long range shooting most of that communication between the spotter and the shooter came from like target talk-ons and things that I've done, somewhere else. And, is it direct application? No, but like there's clear and concise, correct communication. And that's, I think, really helpful in different aspects of life.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done the episode on our security team and kind of how that's set up and some of the training that we do and all that good stuff. One of the key things that happens in every single scenario when we're running security training is if something escalates at all, we're calling 911. Well, you need to be able to effectively communicate with someone who's going to respond to the church in in whatever dangerous scenario or high stress scenario that you're going to have. And you need to be able to communicate with them what's going on and where you're at and who just showed up and all of the things that you just described about effective communication. Like there's no telling when that might happen in your everyday life. Yep. In a security situation, if something happened at your house and you needed to call the police or you needed to call EMS or whatever it might be, like there are tons of people who, and I think we're losing this skill more and more, who just don't talk on the phone anymore. And so like they're not having regular communication face to face. They're not having regular communication over the phone, much less over a radio, and then having to sit there and wait for the response from the other person before they can talk again. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot about that we're losing as a society that is actually really, really important.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Even you find guys when they first start talking the radio, you key the mic and your brain goes blank, and you think you're doing fine, and then you play back the tapes for them, and you're like, you sound like you're a retard. And so I think it's great practice to think about what you're going to say and all that kind of stuff. A couple of them asked to be pushed harder. I said, give me a scale 1 to 10, how hard it was. Like I have an idea of like how hard I'm trying to push you, but like, what did you think? And Paige said, you should say 1 to 10, but you can't say 7.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they all said 7. I let them get away.
All
with
of them. That's like, I don't know what to answer on the question. I just pick C.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that people's brains do. If you remove that option, they have to go, oh, I'm really committed to this, or like, I'm really not.
Apparently that's the thing. I didn't, like, when you say, hey, rate your looks on a scale of 1 to 10, you can't say 7. You
can't say 7.
I'm not an 8, but like,
I really don't want to say 6
I'm
though.
a soft 6.
Yeah.
They like the op order briefing. They like having to think through the mission. They really like the evasion, the side by sides, and having those out there, wasn't that much more work, but it really gave us more ability to be at different places at, quickly.
Nice.
to play op for. Things that they said would be better. They want basic medical training, which we haven't done with them. I think it's actually coming up this September for them, but that's something that I think would be helpful. Mm-hmm. They're talking about like, we went through, Joe got shot and they put on a tourniquet and things like that, but they went and, but they're just talking about like normal, basic, real world kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the pyro could have been better. So I stopped at a fireworks shop in Wyoming on the way up, and I brought a Bic, and it was just so windy that like when I wanted explosions, like it took a while to get those fuses lit.
So you need a torch lighter and some better fireworks.
The M80s, I don't know what it is. They are not as, I thought it's going to feel like a mortar going off. They were kind of weak. They want more OPFOR, and like I do too, but it's actually relatively tough to get a bunch of grown men to spend 4 days away from their families when they should be working. Like it's actually the fact that we got 4 guys out there was, I think, awesome, but
pretty solid.
It would obviously be cooler with more OPFOR. They want more academics on how to talk on the radio. They thought they should be better with noise discipline in the woods, which is, I think, pretty good self-awareness. And then we talked about making SOPs for Titus 2. So there are so many things that we're doing that we're like kind of making up on the fly. Like, how are you going to cross a road? How are you going to cross a linear danger area? And if you kind of tell them already, and they all know some of these things, and how do you carry your water? And, I think that they just want to be told, and this would be pretty normal for, any kind of military unit to have SOPs. So that might be something we work on this year to say, okay, develop your SOP for this, and we write it down, and they know it, and they can kind of execute without having to like brief it every time.
And then it's easier to pass on when you get the next class of kids that move up and move into the program. I like that.
Yep.
It's really good.
But yeah, overall, super happy with how they did. That was the maybe the last thing I'll say is for an environment like this, if you're not getting yelled at and doing push-ups, like, you're doing okay, right? Like, but I also throughout, and especially at the end, I followed up with an email and told them like, no, you guys did really good. I'm really proud of you. Like, just trying to give them encouragement and tell them like positively, not just like lack of yelling, but like positively, you guys actually are doing well, and I'm proud of you, and things like that. So I am, like, they did do well. They did well last year, but just having another year under their belt, they're about 30-40% new this year. Mm-hmm. And you could tell a difference for the ones who had been out there and knew what to expect, and the new ones that had only heard the stories.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. It's cool to see the improvement that quickly. And it's exciting to think about like what those young men are going to look like as they, get into adulthood and start, working jobs or starting businesses or doing whatever they're going to be doing. I think they're just going to be way more capable. And all the time when I'm run into people that are outside of our little echo chamber, not just like, reformed Twitter ghetto, but like even just outside Refuge Church, I'm like, man, like people are not that hard to beat. Like if you put a little bit of effort in, you can beat most of the people in our culture right now, just because they don't try very hard. They have no work ethic. They're all entitled. And that's actually like, it's frustrating, but also it's an encouragement for our team, mm-hmm. To know that like the competition's actually not that stiff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, hopefully that is a good episode for you guys. Hopefully you get some ideas, some stuff that you can do in your place and with your people that will be helpful and fruitful. And hopefully we get to continue to develop this stuff and see it spread and put into practice in other places. And, anything that we can do to be more prepared, to be more skilled, to be better leaders, better communicators, all of that stuff, and especially with our young men, be able to send them out into the world more equipped to succeed, I think is awesome. So, all right, we'll see you guys in the next one. As always, stay frosty, fight the good fight, act like men.